A small village called 9 Mile in Jamaica, a boy named Robert Nesta Marley was born on February 6, 1945. Everyone called him Bob. His mother, Cedella, was a kind and loving woman. She took care of Bob and worked hard to give him a good life. His father, Norval Marley, was from England, but he did not live with them. Bob grew up mostly with his mother. 9 Mile was a quiet and beautiful place. There were many green hills, big trees, and small houses. People in the village were poor, but they were happy. They lived a simple life. They grew fruits and vegetables in their gardens and shared food with their neighbors. Bob was a curious and happy boy. He loved to run, climb trees, and play with his friends. But more than anything, he loved music. Every night, the people in 9 Mile sang songs and told stories. Bob listened carefully. He loved the way music made people feel happy and free. When Bob was 6 years old, he discovered something special, his own voice. One day he was singing in the yard, and a neighbor heard him. She smiled and said,
Bob, you have a beautiful voice. One day you will be a great singer.
Bob felt proud and excited. Bob's best friend was a boy named Neville Bunny Livingston. Bunny also loved music. One day, Bunny made a homemade guitar with a wooden box and some wires. Bob was very interested. He touched the guitar and tried to play. Bunny showed him how to strum the strings. From that day, Bob and Bunny played music every day. Bob also loved to listen to the radio. He listened to different types of music, like rhythm and blues, R&B, from the United States. He liked artists like Fats Domino and Ray Charles. Their songs were full of emotion and rhythm. Bob wanted to make music like them. When Bob was 12 years old, his mother decided to move to Kingston, the capital of Jamaica. She wanted to find a better life and more opportunities for Bob. Kingston was very different from 9 Mile. It was a big city with cars, buses, and many people. It was also noisy and busy. Bob and his mother moved to a poor area called Trenchtown. Life there was hard. Many people had no jobs and lived in small houses made of wood and metal. At first, Bob felt sad. He missed the quiet life in 9 Mile. But soon he found something special in Trenchtown: music. In Kingston, people loved a new kind of music called ska. It was fast and energetic. It made people dance and smile. In Trenchtown, young musicians played ska music in the streets. Bob and Bunny watched them play. They wanted to make music like them. Bob met another boy named Peter Tosh. Peter was tall and serious, but he also loved music. The three boys, Bob, Bunny, and Peter, became good friends. They played music together every day. Bob, Bunny, and Peter decided to form a band. They called themselves the Wailing Wailers. The word wail means to cry out or express pain. They chose this name because they wanted to sing about the struggles of poor people. The Wailers practiced day and night. They wrote songs about life, love, and justice. Bob's voice was strong, and his lyrics were deep and meaningful. People in Trenchtown started to notice them. One day, a famous producer named Coxsone Dodd heard them sing. He liked their sound and invited them to record a song in his studio, Studio One. The Wailers were very excited. This was their big opportunity. In the studio, the Wailers recorded their first song, Judge Not. The song had a strong message: do not judge people, because nobody is perfect. Then they recorded another song, Simmer Down. This song was about stopping violence in the streets of Kingston. When Simmer Down was played on the radio, it became a huge hit. People loved it. Bob Marley and the Wailers were now famous in Jamaica. Even though the Wailers were famous, they did not make much money. The music business in Jamaica was controlled by rich producers, and they paid very little to young musicians. Bob had to work hard to survive. He worked as a welder, fixing metal in a factory. But his real passion was music. After work, he and the Wailers continued writing songs and practicing. Bob was determined. He knew that one day his music would change the world. During this time, Bob met a young woman named Rita Anderson. She was a singer, and she loved music like Bob. They became close friends, and soon they fell in love. Bob and Rita got married in 1966. Rita became an important part of Bob's life. She supported his dreams and helped him in his musical journey. In 1966, Bob's mother invited him to come to the United States. She lived in Delaware, a small state in the U.S. Bob decided to visit her and find work. He worked in a factory, doing simple jobs. But even in America, Bob never stopped thinking about music. After a few months, he returned to Jamaica. He knew that his future was not in America, but in the music of Jamaica. When Bob came back, he had new ideas. He started learning about Rastafarianism, a spiritual movement that talked about peace, love, and unity. The Rastafarians believed that all people were equal and should live in harmony. Bob grew dreadlocks, a style of hair that was important to the Rastafarians. He also started eating natural food and thinking about big ideas, justice, freedom, and love. His music started to change. He no longer wanted to sing just about love. He wanted to sing about the struggles of the people. His songs became stronger and more powerful. Bob Marley and the Wailers were ready for the next step. Soon their music would reach the world. Bob Marley had returned to Jamaica after a short time in the United States. His time in America had shown him a different world, but he knew his true purpose was in music. Back in Kingston, Bob was ready to take the Wailers to the next level. During this time, Bob started learning more about Rastafarianism. The Rastafarians believed in peace, love, and unity. They followed the teachings of Haile Selassie, the Emperor of Ethiopia, who they saw as a great leader. Rastafarians believed in living naturally, eating healthy food, and growing dreadlocks as a symbol of their faith. They also believed in freedom and equality for all people. Bob found strength and inspiration in these ideas. Bob changed his lifestyle. He grew his hair into dreadlocks, stopped eating processed food, and started thinking about bigger ideas: justice, love, and revolution. His music also began to change. He no longer wanted to sing only about love, he wanted to sing about freedom. Around this time, Jamaican music was also changing. Ska had been the most popular music in Jamaica, but it was fast and energetic. Then came rocksteady, which was slower and had a stronger beat. Now a new style of music was emerging: reggae. Reggae was even slower than rocksteady, with a deep bass line and a strong rhythm. It was relaxing, but also full of power. The lyrics of reggae songs often talked about poverty, injustice, and hope. Bob Marley and the Wailers started playing reggae music. Their sound was different. It had a message. People in Jamaica started listening carefully to Bob's lyrics. His words gave them hope. Bob and the Wailers continued recording music, but they were still struggling. They were famous in Jamaica, but they needed international success. Then something big happened. In 1972, Bob Marley and the Wailers met Chris Blackwell, a music producer from England. Blackwell was the owner of Island Records, a big music company. He listened to Bob's music and saw something special. Chris Blackwell offered the Wailers a contract to record an album for Island Records. This was a huge opportunity. Bob and the band recorded their first international album, Catch a Fire. The album was a success. Songs like Concrete Jungle, and Stir It Up became popular in England and the United States. For the first time, people outside of Jamaica were listening to Bob Marley's music. Bob and the Wailers went on a tour to promote the album. They traveled to England and America, playing for new audiences. People were amazed by Bob's energy on stage. His music was not just for entertainment, it was a movement. After the success of Catch a Fire, the Wailers recorded another album, Burnin'. This album included one of their most famous songs, Get Up, Stand Up. Get Up, Stand Up was a powerful song. It told people to fight for their rights and not accept oppression. The song became an anthem for justice. At this time, Bob was becoming more than a musician. He was becoming a leader. People started seeing him as a voice for the poor and oppressed. In 1974, Peter Tosh and Bunny Wailer decided to leave the band. They wanted to follow their own musical paths. Bob respected their decision, but he knew he had to keep going. Bob created a new version of the band, now called Bob Marley the Wailers. He added new musicians, including talented backup singers called the I-Threes. One of the singers was Rita Marley, Bob's wife. With this new band, Bob was ready to take reggae music to the world. In 1975, Bob Marley the Wailers released the album Natty Dread. One of the most famous songs from this album was No Woman, No Cry. This song was very special. It talked about hard life in Trenchtown, but also gave a message of hope. Bob told people that things would get better. The song became one of the most famous reggae songs in history. In 1976, Bob Marley released another album, Rastaman Vibration. This album had another powerful song, War. War was based on a speech by Haile Selassie, the Ethiopian emperor. The song talked about equality and how there would be no peace until all people were free. At this time, Jamaica was going through political violence. Two political parties were fighting, and people were divided. Bob believed that music could bring people together. In 1976, Bob Marley wanted to do something to help Jamaica. He decided to organize a big concert called Smile Jamaica. The goal was to bring peace and unite people through music. But just before the concert, something terrible happened. Gunmen entered Bob Marley's house and shot him. Bob was injured, and so was his wife Rita Marley and his manager. People were shocked. Who wanted to hurt Bob? Some people believed that politicians were afraid of his influence. Others thought it was criminals who wanted to stop the concert. But Bob was not afraid. Even though he was hurt, he went on stage at Smile Jamaica and performed for the crowd. He told the people, "The bad people in this world never take a break, so I will not take a break either." His performance was legendary. He played for 80,000 people, sending a message of peace and unity. After the attack, Bob realized that Jamaica was too dangerous for him. He loved his country, but he needed to protect his family. So in 1977, he moved to London, England. In London, Bob recorded one of his most famous albums, Exodus. The album included great songs like Jamming, One Love, and Three Little Birds. One Love was especially powerful. It talked about love, peace, and unity. People all over the world started singing it. The song became a symbol of hope and brotherhood. With Exodus, Bob Marley had officially become a global superstar. His music was no longer just for Jamaica, it was for the entire world. But Bob's journey was not over yet. His mission was still to spread the message of peace, love, and justice. Bob Marley had become a global superstar. His music was not only popular in Jamaica, but in Europe, America, and Africa. He was no longer just a musician. He was a symbol of peace, unity, and resistance. After the success of Exodus, Bob Marley and the Wailers continued making powerful music. In 1978, they released Kaya, an album with a softer, more relaxed sound. Songs like Is This Love and Satisfy My Soul showed a more personal side of Bob. At this time, Bob was also becoming more involved in political and social issues. He believed that music could bring people together and fight injustice. The One Love Peace concert. Jamaica was still in a political crisis. Violence between rival political groups was increasing. Bob Marley wanted to do something to unite the people. In April 1978, he organized the One Love Peace concert in Kingston. It was a historic moment. In the middle of the concert, Bob did something incredible. He brought the two rival political leaders, Michael Manley and Edward Seaga, on stage. He took their hands and raised them together in front of the crowd. The people cheered and cried. It was a moment of unity and hope. Even though the violence in Jamaica did not stop completely, Bob had shown that music could bring people together. Bob Marley had always felt a deep connection to Africa. He believed that all Black people were connected and should unite. He wanted to help Africans fight for their freedom and rights. In 1979, Bob released the album Survival, which had powerful songs about Africa and justice. Songs like Zimbabwe became anthems for African liberation movements. In 1980, Bob Marley was invited to perform in Zimbabwe for their Independence Day celebrations. It was a special moment. His music had inspired the people of Zimbabwe to fight for their freedom from British rule. When Bob arrived in Africa, thousands of people came to see him. He performed for a huge crowd, and many people cried with joy and gratitude. Even though Bob Marley was at the height of his career, something was wrong. He was feeling tired and weak. During a football game in New York, he injured his toe, but it didn't heal properly. Doctors discovered that Bob had cancer in his toe. They told him he needed to amputate it, but Bob refused. He believed in natural healing and thought that removing his toe would affect his ability to perform and play football. At first, Bob continued touring and making music, but his health was getting worse. In 1980, Bob Marley and the Wailers released Uprising, one of their most powerful albums. It included songs like Redemption Song, a beautiful and emotional song about freedom and hope. Bob started his final tour in Europe and the United States. He played in front of huge crowds, and people from all over the world came to see him. His last concert was in Pittsburgh, USA, on September 23, 1980. Bob was very sick, but he still went on stage and gave everything he had. It was a magical night, but it was also the end of an era. After his last concert, Bob's health got worse and worse. His cancer had spread, and he was too weak to continue performing. He went to Germany for treatment, but doctors said there was nothing more they could do. Bob decided he wanted to go back to Jamaica, his home. But he never made it. On May 11, 1981, in Miami, Florida, Bob Marley passed away. He was only 36 years old. His last words to his son Ziggy were, "Money can't buy life." The news of Bob's death spread around the world. Millions of people felt sad, but also grateful for his music and message. Bob Marley was given a state funeral in Jamaica, an honor usually reserved for political leaders. Thousands of people came to say goodbye. His body was taken back to 9 Mile, where he was born. He was buried with his guitar, a Bible, and a soccer ball, 3 things he loved most. Even though Bob Marley is no longer alive, his music and message continue to inspire people. Songs like One Love, No Woman, No Cry, and Three Little Birds are still played all over the world. His message of peace, love, and justice is still important today. People see Bob Marley not only as a musician, but as a leader, a poet, and a revolutionary.